Modern football is obsessed with finding the next superstar. Every year, a new wonder kid is labeled as the next Lionel Messi, the next Cristiano Ronaldo, or the future Ballon d'Or winner. Newspapers publish bold headlines, fans begin to dream, clubs are willing to spend enormous amounts of money before a young player has even completed a full season in professional football. But almost every time, the story ends the same way. The pressure becomes greater than the talent. The player stops developing, suffers injuries, loses confidence, or simply fails to live up to expectations. We've already seen it happen with Freddie Adu, Bojan Krkic, Ansu Fati, João Felix, and dozens of other players who were once predicted to become football's next great icons. That's why when another teenage talent emerged in Spain, many people barely reacted. They had heard this story before, but it didn't take long to realize that this case was different. At just 15 years old, Lamine Yamal made his debut for Barcelona's first team. At 16, he became a full international for Spain. At 17, he was already one of the standout players at the UEFA European Championship. And the most incredible part isn't his age, it's the way he plays. He looks completely unfazed by the pressure, as if performing on the biggest stage in world football is the most natural thing in the world. But is Lamine Yamal really the most talented footballer we've seen since a young Lionel Messi? Or is the football world once again crowning its next superstar far too early? To answer that question, we have to go back to the beginning. Most future stars begin to stand out during their teenage years. Some become the best players in their academy at 15 or 16. But Lamine Yamal caught people's attention much earlier than that. Even at La Masia, Barcelona's famous academy, coaches quickly noticed something unusual about him. It wasn't his pace, it wasn't his technique, it wasn't even his dribbling. What impressed them the most was his decision-making. While other kids reacted after receiving the ball, Yamal had already made his decision before the pass even arrived. He constantly scanned the pitch, checked the positions of teammates and defenders, spotted open spaces, and predicted how the attack would develop several seconds in advance. For a child, that level of football intelligence seemed almost impossible. Because of that, he was regularly promoted to play against much older age groups, and every single time, the same thing happened. At first, coaches wondered whether a small, skinny teenager could compete against stronger and more physically developed players, but after only a few training sessions, those doubts disappeared. Once again, he looked like the best player on the pitch, not because he was faster, not because he was stronger, but because his understanding of the game was operating on a completely different level. It was around that time that people first began comparing him to Lionel Messi. At first glance, the similarities seem obvious. Both came through La Masia, both are left-footed, both prefer playing on the right wing before cutting inside, but if you watch them closely, you quickly realize they are very different players. A young Messi hypnotized defenders with his dribbling. He could glide past 3, 4, or even 5 opponents in a single run. Yamal plays a different kind of football. He dribbles far less for the sake of entertainment. If there's an opportunity to create a dangerous attack with a quick pass, he'll almost always choose that option. His goal isn't to show off his individual brilliance. His goal is to make the right decision. And that's exactly why many football experts believe his greatest strength has very little to do with his technical ability. Most fans believe Lamine Yamal's biggest weapon is his dribbling, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. His greatest weapon is his decision-making. Almost every action he takes has a purpose. He rarely takes unnecessary touches. He almost never holds onto the ball for too long. He knows exactly when to speed up the game and when to slow it down. He understands when it's worth taking on a defender and when a simple pass into space is the far more dangerous option. That's why his football looks so mature. Many players don't develop that level of game intelligence until they're 25 or even 30 years old. Yamal has shown it almost from the very beginning of his professional career. But there's another reason why defenders find it so difficult to play against him. At first glance, it seems like he's simply incredibly fast, but pace isn't the biggest factor. What's far more important is the way he changes his tempo. His first few steps often look slow. The defender begins to adjust to that rhythm, shifts their body weight in one direction, and prepares for his next move. That's exactly when Yamal suddenly explodes with acceleration or changes direction completely. The defender is already beaten before they even have time to react. It's a technique that once made a young Lionel Messi almost impossible to stop, but Yamal uses it a little differently. After beating his man, he's far more likely to look for a pass than a shot on goal. That's why defenders never know what's coming next. If a player is predictable, you can stop him, but when every action is different from the last, defending becomes almost impossible. Before UEFA Euro 2024, many people saw Yamal as nothing more than an incredibly talented teenager. Yes, he was already playing for Barcelona. Yes, football experts were impressed by his performances. But an international tournament is a completely different level of pressure. That's where you truly find out whether a player is ready for the biggest stage. Most young players become more cautious. They avoid risks, choose the safest option, and try not to take responsibility. But once again, Yamal was the exception. From the very first match, it was obvious that he hadn't come to gain experience. He had come to win. Every time he touched the ball, defenders immediately shifted toward him. They knew Spain's most dangerous attacks would come through him, yet even that wasn't enough to stop the young winger. His passes constantly unlocked defenses, his dribbling tore opponents apart, and his composure was just as impressive as his technical ability. The defining moment came in the semi-final against France. Spain were trailing. Some of the best defenders in the world stood between Yamal and the goal. The pressure couldn't have been any greater, and it's in moments like these that true stars are born. Receiving the ball just outside the penalty area, Yamal took a few steps forward, cut inside, and curled a perfect shot into the far corner. The ball kissed the post before finding the back of the net. It wasn't just a spectacular goal, it was the moment the entire football world stopped seeing him as a promising teenager. From that point on, he was recognized as a world-class player capable of deciding the biggest matches at just 17 years old. After that tournament, the comparisons with Messi became even louder, but perhaps people have been asking the wrong question. Instead of searching for the next Messi, maybe we should accept that every great footballer becomes a legend because of their own identity. Messi wasn't the next Maradona, Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't the next Pelé. They created their own legacy, and that's exactly the path Lamine Yamal seems to be following. Even today, his style is different from that of most young players. He doesn't play for highlights, he plays to win, and that's why so many experts believe his potential is even greater than it appears. Despite all of his talent, however, the biggest challenges still lie ahead. Football history has been ruthless to young superstars. One brilliant season is only the beginning. True greatness is measured by whether a player can remain among the very best for years. Defenders will study every movement Yamal makes. Coaches will build entire game plans to stop him. The media will analyze every mistake. The pressure will only grow stronger. Because becoming a legend takes more than talent, it requires constant improvement, staying healthy, handling enormous expectations, and proving season after season that you belong at the very top. That's why answering the main question is both easy and difficult. Yes, Lamine Yamal already looks like the most talented young footballer we've seen since Lionel Messi. His technique, football intelligence, decision-making, and mental composure are qualities that rarely exist together in a player so young. But talent is only the first chapter of any great story. The most important chapters are still waiting to be written. Perhaps in 10 years we'll be talking about him as one of the greatest players of his generation. Or perhaps he will mark the beginning of a completely new era in football, one where the next generation of wonder kids won't be compared to Messi but to Lamine Yamal himself.